in the United States said. But that same president pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists who killed Capitol police officers, spit and stomped on them, and they were called patriots.
I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these other news items that people are talking about. The APWU has condemned the arrest of David Huerta in California and has generally been supportive of, protests against the indiscriminate ICE raids. Why is it important for the Postal Workers Union to take a stand on that issue?
Well, not only our union, I think it's important for all unions and all working people, no matter where we stand on the political spectrum. We respect the fact, and we look at it as a source of strength, that the folks that we represent are throughout the entire country, have many different beliefs, vote all sorts of different ways. But part of respecting that is on these type of issues, we should all be united wherever we stand on the political spectrum in defense of the right to protest. The union movement was built on the right to protest. The civil rights movement was built through protest. The women's suffrage and rights movement was built through protest. And that's what's under attack in LA. And I just want to warn everybody, I do this with our own members. When you see this promoted, in quotes, violence going on in LA, which is a tiny, tiny sliver of what's going on, beware that those are usually false flag operations, where the provocateurs and often the police themselves will help create the violence and then use it to carry out their suppression. Those who have studied history know about Remember the Maine in the Spanish-American War. So I'd be awful careful about the news coverage there. What's basically going on there are peaceful protests. And David Huerta, the president of one of the large SEIU, Service Employees International Union entities in California, went to observe ICE raids in the workplace where his members work. For that crime, in quotes, he was not only arrested, he was injured. And on top of that now, think about the chilling effect they're trying to have. So Senator Padilla in California, one of the two elected senators from California, goes into a meeting or a press conference, whatever it was, with Homeland Secretary Noem, and raises resistance. He gets tackled. He gets thrown to the ground by ICE and FBI agents. He gets handcuffed. He says, I'm a U.S. senator. And this president of the United States today says, well, he looked like he was, quotes, illegal. Think about the chauvinism and the white supremacy of a remark like that. Somebody looks like they're subhuman. And so this is a very dangerous time. You add the Colombia permanent resident, Khalil, who then basically gets kidnapped by ICE, even though he's here legally, because he happened to speak out in defense of the Palestinian people of Gaza. If they're allowed to declare basically martial law in Los Angeles, to send in active duty troops against the civilian population, that's going to get all of us. And I was out there today on No King's Day, and I hope everybody was, because that tyranny is going to be first and mostly directed at working people and oppressed people. And they want to come after the right to protest. They want to scare people. There was just an assassination today in Minnesota of a liberal Democratic rep, and it's connected to all of this incitement of violence that's going on. And the violence that's happening in LA is because those National Guardsmen were federalized, because the Marines are there, and because maybe there's state provocations going on. So we have to defend the right to protest. And we will defend the right to protest of those protesters that I may not agree with. But defense of the right is just like the right to free speech. Every right has limits. But the basic fundamental right, people don't have a right to yell fire in a crowded movie theater. So there's a limit to free speech. But that limit should be very rare and very restricted. And that right to protest is so fundamental to making real change and positive change in the history of the United States of America, in the history of our labor movement. And we're very close, if we're not there, to martial law in this country, meaning the democratic rights of the right to due process, to habeas corpus, to a lawyer of your choice, for example. All those rights could be just tossed out behind these fake declarations of emergencies and insurrection. And I can't resist sharing with your listener, Jacob. Look at the double standard between the way the protesters are being treated in LA and the threats against them. If you spit, we'll hit, the president of the United States said. But that same president pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists, some of whom killed Capitol police officers, injured Capitol police officers, spit and stomped on them.
Right.
And they were called patriots. The hypocrisy should help people see through and get to the truth.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
It really is concerning what's going on in the country right now. You mentioned the No King's Day protests. That's actually where I'm headed immediately following our interview. I'll be speaking at the local event as the president of the Labor Council. And the APWU, you just did now on our program, but also on Twitter and probably other social media platforms. The APWU has encouraged members to participate in these events across the country. And I think that there's really an attempt to do two things actually with this protest, and one of them is to demean and to say that these are not meaningful and they're not going to make a change, and we can see that is just not true, because just this morning Trump's immigration officials announced that guidance has come down to end most of these raids, right? So these protests, even before they've happened, have had such a big, or before the big ones all across the country have happened, have had such a big effect on the administration, and it's working. And another thing that they're trying to do is they're trying to raise the specter of violence and things like that. And I was interviewed by multiple TV stations here locally about this event that the Labor Council is participating in. And, the news reporters were constantly asking me, like, are y'all going to be violent? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, the thing is from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Like, what do you mean? Are we going to be violent? Like, but this narrative is getting out there, and I think there's a concern, like you said, about agitators and provocateurs getting in there. And I've seen some pictures from the event today of some people who are looking kind of menacingly at the crowd. And so there's a lot of there's multiple things going on with these protests, but nevertheless, I think that it's important for people to go out and show that they oppose what this administration is doing, not only to immigrants, but like we just talked about with the budget reconciliation bill and things like that. The attacks on working people to benefit billionaires. But is there anything else that you want to say about this event today, or events like it, and why it's important for people to come out, and why APWU members should come out if they can?
I just think just putting our feet in the street, saying this is unacceptable, this is outrageous, is a start. If we're too intimidated to get our feet in the streets, and look, protest hasn't always been easy. We've all seen the documentary films, and some of us lived through it, of the civil rights movement and fire hoses and dogs, but people still stood up with tremendous courage and determination, and that changed this country. So we cannot allow ourselves to be intimidated. We cannot allow, you got sheriffs around the country talking about killing protesters. This is disgusting. and they talk about being patriotic. That's as unpatriotic as it can get. So I just think it's really important for people, for working people, for union people, for all people that are justice-minded and fair-minded, to get out there and say, this march to tyranny has to stop. The world's seen it before. We saw it in Nazi Germany. We saw how that was directed at destroying unions and destroying the rights of working people, and how much death and destruction it led to in the world. And it got to the point that death camps were the answer to the, using the superiority of one race over another. Imagine that. People accepted the murder in gas chambers of other human beings. But the big lie that there's a superior race, in that case called the Aryan race, rings far too troubling in today's situation, because it's very similar. So I think resistance is where it starts. And look, if people think we're going to win this stuff in the courts with the Supreme Court we had, and I'm all for using everything that we can as union folks, as a labor movement, and as a people. But to think that this is going to be stopped by the courts, I think is wishful thinking. I think that the people themselves in the streets, like on days like today, can then influence the courts. But if we're not there pressing and pushing and putting the line in the sand, this is just going to get worse. So I encourage everybody to get out there. I'm visiting two of my daughters in Charleston, South Carolina today. We went out this morning. There were probably at least 2,000 people there. And it was mainly around the defense of democratic rights, the defense of the right to protest, the defense of the right to vote. So it's really important. Hats off to everybody who gets out there. And this isn't going to be the end. This is going to be the beginning, or part of the beginning. But it's a whole lot better to be out there with this than the government spending $100 million while they're picking the pockets of Medicaid recipients from the least amongst us, having a military parade on the birthday of somebody that's acting like a king. We overthrew the king in 1776. Let's not go back, and let's not allow it to go back.
Mark Dimondstein, National President of the American Postal Workers Union, representing over 200,000 active and retired postal workers. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jacob. And get out there on No King's Day, and I hope you have a heck of a turnout.
All right. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Take care.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.